She was the richest woman in Houston, until a street kid told her one sentence that made her question everything. "Give me your food, and in 1 hour, you'll stand up." No doctor believed him, but they all remembered the day she walked back into her empire. Stay with me. The moment you learn why the boy helped her, you'll understand why this story still breaks people's hearts. Tap subscribe before we continue. It began half a year earlier, on the morning Victoria Hart's life shattered cleanly into before and after. That morning, Victoria was unstoppable. As CEO of HeartBuild, the largest private construction empire in the country, she cut through the sky in her private helicopter toward Dallas, champagne glass in hand, future expansion plans spread across her tablet. Forests curled beneath her like dark rivers. Every note she made carved a new decade of dominance. Then the world ripped apart. A metallic shriek swallowed the rotors. The helicopter lurched violently. The pilot yelled something she couldn't hear. Sky and earth spun together in a brutal blur. Then impact. Fire. Shattering noise. Weightlessness, slamming into blackness. When she woke, she was inside twisted metal and burning fumes. Gasoline burned her throat. Blood filled her mouth. Pain throbbed somewhere deep in her arm. She clawed at the wreckage, tried to crawl, tried to run. "Move," she commanded her legs. Nothing. They looked normal, perfect, untouched, but felt dead, artificial, wrong. Rain hissed across flaming debris as she lay there, waiting for rescuers, unable to command the body she once weaponized. In that moment she understood. The life she ruled with iron precision was over. The next 6 months turned into a pilgrimage of broken promises. Switzerland, Israel, Germany, Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, surgeries, scans, experimental treatments. Money had always bought miracles, but every verdict was the same. Crushed spinal column, torn ligaments, permanent paralysis. No hope. She returned to Houston not as its untouchable monarch, but as a woman entombed in a mansion she could no longer navigate. Hallways became mazes, staircases turned to cliffs. Doors were barricades. Even mirrors became enemies. She fired staff for breathing too loudly, shattered glass she didn't want to face. Rage was the only thing she could still feel fully. But nothing ignited her fury like the dead weight attached to her hips. One bright autumn afternoon, suffocating inside her own home, she ordered Marcus, her driver and chief of security, to take her into the city. She didn't need air. She needed witnesses, proof she still existed. At the Monarch Room, Houston's most exclusive restaurant, servers practically sprinted to clear her path. Diners offered that soft, poisonous pity she despised. She snapped her order, steak, rare, and your best wine, and sat beneath the shade of a wide oak, pretending she still enjoyed any of it. The food was perfect. The wine was flawless. Everything tasted like ash. She would have traded her entire fortune just to stand and walk to the car. Then the bushes rustled. A boy stepped out, maybe 11, maybe 12. Thin, clothes torn and oversized, sneakers held together with duct tape. Dirt clung to his face and hands. But he walked with a strange, quiet conviction, as if he'd already survived more than life should demand from a child. Marcus tensed behind her, reaching for his radio. "Hey, kid," he barked. "Private property. Move along." The boy ignored him. He went straight up to Victoria's table and studied her. Not the famous CEO, not the legend. He looked at her legs, her face, her untouched steak. "You're not going to finish that," he said. Not asking, stating. His voice was rough but steady. Victoria blinked. The audacity stunned her. "What?" "The steak," he pointed with a dirty finger. "You're done, but my dogs are hungry." Heat surged in her chest. How dared he? A street kid telling Victoria Hart what she needed? "Listen to me, you little brat," she hissed. "Leave before security throws you over that railing. I don't give to beggars." He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He smirked, a hard, adult expression that didn't belong on a child's face. "I'm not a beggar," he said. I'm offering you a deal." She laughed, sharp, ugly, echoing across the terrace. "A deal? What could you possibly offer me?" He leaned in, eyes eerily calm. "Give me the steak," he whispered. "Give me your scraps, and I'll teach you how to walk." Victoria stilled. Her fork slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the plate. "Teach me to walk?" she repeated slowly. She'd heard miracle claims from men in white coats with 10 framed diplomas behind them, and now a child wanted to bargain with her for leftovers. It was so absurd she erupted into cruel, ringing laughter. Several tables turned. "You're insane," she spat, "or the smartest con artist alive. You think my scraps are worth more than the best surgeons in the world?" Victoria flicked her gaze toward her assistant, Jason Miller, all polished surfaces and empty ambition, lounging at the next table with his phone. "Jason, give him some money and get him out of my sight." Jason reacted instantly. That was his talent. Fast obedience, fast greed. He pulled out his designer wallet and peeled off several crisp bills. One, another, then another, the kind of money that could keep a whole street alive for weeks. With a smirk, he tossed the cash onto the table like scraps thrown to a stray dog. "Take it, kid," he drawled. "Buy a new life. Disappear." The bills fluttered down beside her half-eaten steak. Victoria watched the boy carefully, waiting for the telltale shift, the widening eyes, the desperate grab, the instinct to survive. But the boy didn't look down, not once. His gaze stayed on hers, steady, unwavering, and painfully disappointed. Not scared, not angry, just disappointed, as if she had failed a test she didn't know she was taking. "I don't want your paper," he said. His voice carried effortlessly in the breeze. "My dogs can't eat paper. They need meat, and you need your legs. Fair trade." Marcus had reached his limit. The massive security chief rose behind Victoria like a storm cloud, shadow swallowing the boy whole. "That's enough," he growled. "You've got 3 seconds to get out of here before I break your spine." He reached for the boy. "Stop!" Victoria's command cracked like a whip. Marcus froze with his hand suspended inches from the kid's shirt. The look he shot her was half confusion, half disbelief. "Ms. Hart, he's mocking you. Let me—" "I said sit and be silent." Her voice, the same voice that once controlled entire skyscrapers' worth of executives, cut through the air with terrifying precision. "No one touches him unless I say so." Even she didn't fully understand why she said it. Logic screamed to throw the boy out. Pride demanded she crush him. But instinct, the same ruthless instinct that built an empire, whispered, "Look closer. He's not lying." Because in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in months. Strength that didn't tremble, certainty that didn't blink, and not a trace of fear. Silence stretched thin. She could hear a car engine humming far below, maybe even her own heartbeat. She studied the boy's face, searching for the usual signs of deception. Twitch, smirk, flicker of greed. Nothing. His expression held the strangely solemn focus of someone performing a ritual. "Do you even understand what you're claiming?" she finally asked, voice trembling not from doubt, but from the possibility of hope. "Doctors said my spinal cord is torn. It cannot be fixed." "Doctors love big words," the boy said gently, "but I'm not talking about bones. I'm talking about your brain. Your brain shut your legs off, like turning off lights in an empty room. I know how to flip the switch back on." The words were absurd, impossible, yet they landed with a quiet, unnerving logic that made her chest tighten. Victoria exhaled shakily. After months of drowning, even a delusion felt like air. "Fine," she whispered. "The steak is yours." She pushed the plate toward him. "But listen carefully. If you come to my home and turn out to be lying, I'll call the police. I'll say you stole my wallet. You'll spend your youth in juvie. Are you willing to risk that for a piece of meat?" A brutal threat. He didn't even blink. Alex calmly pulled a wrinkled plastic bag from his pocket, packed the steak and sides into it with careful efficiency, tied the knot, and tucked it away. "I'm not afraid of prison," he said. "I'm afraid of wasting my life." Then he stepped back and said, almost casually, "Let's go. Your house will do fine." The ride to Victoria's mansion lasted 30 minutes. Normally, she spent car rides issuing orders, ripping through tasks, conquering minutes like territory. But now she stared out the tinted window in silence, the consequences of her decision settling into her bones. Beside her sat the street kid, quiet as stone. His ripped jeans and duct-taped sneakers looked painfully out of place against the soft Italian leather seats. His hand stayed in his pocket, protectively curled around the food he had earned. He watched the passing skyline with a calm, observant gaze. No fear, no fidgeting, no awe. There was a dignity in him she rarely saw in adults. Victoria stole glances. Who is he? Where did he come from? Why does he look so certain? And why did I say yes? Maybe she was losing her mind. Maybe desperation had melted her judgment. Maybe she was clinging to a fairy tale. But every time she looked at his calm profile, her doubts loosened, just enough to breathe. At the gates, security rushed to assist. Marcus lifted her from the car, an act she hated with a bitterness that made her teeth clench. She expected the boy to stare, to pity her. He didn't. He was already at the front door, studying her mansion with the practical focus of someone evaluating a patient, not a palace. "The office," he said. "Big windows, lots of light. We need light." The staff stared as if she'd brought home a wild animal. Mr. Collins, the house manager, pristine suit, pristine manners, wrinkled his nose. "Ma'am, should I call sanitation? He smells." Victoria looked at the boy. Yes, he smelled like streets, sweat, and autumn dust. But that smell felt, absurdly, like the closest thing to hope she'd felt in half a year. "No, Collins," she snapped. "Bring water, and no one disturbs us. No calls, no visitors. Even if the world ends, I'm not home." Inside her mahogany-lined office, Alex locked the door with a decisive click. Marcus tried to follow, but the boy shut him out without hesitation. Victoria sat in the center of the room. Alex stood before her. "Well," she said, her pulse thudding, "you have your food. I kept my word. Show me your miracle." Alex set his battered backpack on the floor and slowly unzipped it. Victoria stiffened, bracing for God knows what. Instead, he took out a small rubber reflex hammer, a bundle of long needles, and a worn, leather-bound book whose edges were softened by years of handling. "This will hurt," he said simply. "Not your body, your pride. You'll have to put down your armor." "Do it," she whispered. He opened the book. Pages yellowed by time, handwritten notes, anatomical sketches, strange diagrams. "My father's journal," Alex said softly. He touched the cover with a reverence that didn't belong to a child. Cases real doctors refused. He called it the awakening. He believed the body is a machine and the brain is the driver. When the driver panics, the car shuts down, even if nothing is broken. He looked at her legs. "And you, Victoria? Your driver panicked." Victoria listened, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed to slits. "My spine is broken, kid," she muttered. "The wires are cut. Nothing gets through." "Wires can be fixed," Alex replied calmly, "or rerouted. The brain rewires itself all the time. First, we check whether the driver's still awake." He lifted the reflex hammer. "I'm going to tap your knee, but you don't sit there like a mannequin. You see the leg move. Picture it. Convince your brain it's real." Victoria scoffed, exhausted already. "I've done this with every doctor." "No," he said sharply. "You did it to prove them wrong. Now do it because you want to live. Close your eyes." She obeyed. Darkness closed in, the same emptiness she'd been trapped in for months. "Now run," he whispered beside her ear. "Not walk. Run. You're late for a flight. Someone's chasing you, breath burning in your throat. Your calves ache, your heels strike pavement. Run, Victoria. Run." The hammer connected with her tendon. Her eyes snapped open. Nothing. Her leg sat there like a prop, disconnected from her soul. Nothing, she said bitterly. I told you. Useless. Alex didn't flinch. Of course nothing. Your brain built a fortress. It's terrified of pain. So we break the wall. He set aside the hammer and picked up a needle. Victoria stiffened. What are you doing now? Hunting for a live point, he said. Your legs aren't dead. They're asleep. I'm waking them. He sat on the floor, removed her heels, peeled away her silk stockings. Her feet, perfect, pale, expensive, looked strange and distant, like they belonged to someone else. Look at me, he said quietly. Eyes open. You have to want the pain. He slid the needle into her big toe. She watched it disappear into her skin. Nothing. No sting, no pressure. It was happening to someone else's foot. Nothing. He moved higher. Nothing. Center of the soul. Nothing. Minutes dissolved into an hour. Her foot became a constellation of punctures. Alex's brows beaded with sweat, shoulders rising and falling with focused breaths. He worked like someone fighting nature and refusing to lose. Victoria felt the fragile spark she'd carried from the terrace flicker, then die. A fool, she thought. I'm a fool chasing a child's fantasy. Enough, she whispered, defeated. Stop. Take your food and go. Alex raised his head slowly. You're giving up? You? The woman who built an empire from concrete and fire? You fold because your own legs scare you? I'm being realistic, she fired back. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because you don't believe it can, he snapped. You sit in a gold chair drowning in self-pity. Poor Victoria Hart, life is unfair. You're addicted to your misery. It excuses everything. The words hit her harder than any injury she'd suffered in the crash. Rage erupted, primal and blinding. She grabbed a heavy crystal glass and swung it with all the fury of 6 months of humiliation. Get out, she screamed. Get out! And at the exact peak of her fury, as every muscle in her body tightened for the throw, Alex drove the needle between her 4th and 5th toes. Victoria froze. The glass slipped from her hand, rolled across the carpet, water spilling in a thin silver line. Slowly, trembling, she looked down. Her breath stopped. She felt it. Not pain, something hotter, sharper. A jolt of electricity shot from the needle up her leg and detonated behind her eyes. Ah! The sound ripped out of her before she could contain it. Alex yanked the needle back, chest heaving. You felt that? He demanded. She couldn't form words. Her fingers dug into the armrests hard enough to leave crescent marks. Finally, she whispered, voice trembling. There was fire. I felt fire. Alex collapsed onto the floor, laughing. Pure, disbelieving relief. We have a signal, he shouted. My dad was right. The pathway isn't broken. It's blocked. We broke through. Victoria sat frozen, terrified the feeling would vanish. But the echo of that electric burn still pulsed faintly through her calf. The first spark of life in half a year. The most beautiful pain she had ever felt. She looked at the boy sprawled on her carpet, dirty, sweating, triumphant. What now? She rasped. Do I stand? Alex rolled to his knees, instantly focused again. No, not tonight. Tonight we found the door. Now we need the key. This was reconnaissance. The real war starts tomorrow. He packed his tools with calm efficiency. I'll be here at 6 a.m. Be ready. We work until you drop. Then we work more. Alex, she said softly as he reached the door. He turned. Thank you. The word clawed its way out. She hadn't spoken it in months. He nodded once. Feed the dogs. They notice when people care. Then he slipped out the door. For the first time in 6 months, Victoria didn't call for Marcus. She stayed alone in the dark office, gripping the armrests, willing the spark to return. It didn't, but she knew it had been real. And she knew tomorrow would not be the same. Tomorrow she would start fighting again. The next 2 weeks turned her mansion into a war zone. Every morning Alex stood at her door at dawn. No mercy, no breaks. He forced her to crawl across the carpet, drag herself up by her arms, spend hours commanding a single defiant toe to twitch. "Your muscles forgot their orders," he told her whenever she collapsed, knees bleeding. "You're the general. They're the soldiers. Weak general, dead army." It was hell. One morning, her arms gave out and she crashed face first onto the carpet. She couldn't lift herself, could barely breathe. "That's it," she screamed. "I'm done. I'm a cripple, Alex. This is over." He sat beside her without a word and pulled a worn photograph from his pocket. A man's face, exhausted but kind. "My dad always said, the end only comes when you stop fighting. As long as you breathe, you can win. And if you give up now, those sharks will carve up your company. Jason will laugh in your chair." His words sliced deeper than any needle. She pictured Jason sitting in her seat, smug and victorious. Rage surged, pure, volcanic. She planted her palms on the floor and forced herself onto her knees, shaking violently. "Again," she rasped. "Do it again." But the true danger wasn't the pain. It was the people closing in. Rumors about a street kid treating a billionaire spread through Houston like wildfire. And eventually, they reached the one man who could not afford for Victoria Hart to improve, her personal physician, Dr. Lieberman. He'd grown very wealthy, assuring her that nothing in her condition would ever change. He arrived furious. The office doors slammed open. Lieberman stormed in with Marcus right behind him. "What is happening here?" he bellowed, stopping dead at the sight of Victoria on the floor, needles jutting from her legs, Alex kneeling beside her. "Ms. Hart, this child is going to kill you. This is malpractice. This is a crime." He pointed at Alex like at an insect. "Marcus, get this brat out, now." Marcus stepped forward. The boy flinched, only for a heartbeat, but it was enough to show he was still human. "Don't." Victoria's voice sliced through the room like a blade. Marcus froze mid-step. Lieberman stared at her as though she'd completely lost her mind. "Ms. Hart," he tried again, voice trembling with outrage. "He is a fraud. He is exploiting your desperation." "I said, get out." Victoria forced herself upright, gripping the table so hard her knuckles whitened. Her arms shook, but her voice was iron she hadn't felt in months. "You treated me for 6 months. You took millions. And every single day you told me I was hopeless. This boy did in 2 weeks what you never could. I can feel pain." Lieberman paled. "Ms. Hart, you're fired," she said coldly. "Both of you. Out of my house." Marcus dropped his gaze. Lieberman backed away, defeated, and fled. Victoria remained on her knees, breathing hard, sweat tracing down her temples. She turned toward Alex. "We're alone now," she said quietly. 3 days until the board meeting. Jason will try to steal my company. I need to walk into that room on my own legs. Walk, not roll." Alex nodded. His face, usually boyish, had sharpened into something steeled by purpose. "Then we work nights," he said, "until you collapse, and then a little more." The day of the board meeting arrived. On the top floor of Hart-Build's glass tower, executives in tailored suits murmured like sharks circling wounded prey. At the head of the long, polished table sat an empty chair, the CEO's throne. Jason Miller stood at the front, already rehearsing his victory. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice dripping with manufactured sorrow, "Ms. Hart is no longer capable of leadership. Her mind is failing. She brought a street kid into her home as a medical practitioner. It is clear she must be moved into long-term care. I will assume control in the interim." Pens hovered. Heads nodded. At exactly 10 a.m., the heavy double doors began to open. Everyone turned, expecting wheels. But no wheelchair appeared. Instead, they heard it first. Tap, step. Tap, step. An elegant black cane with a silver handle struck the floor. Then Victoria walked into the room on her own legs, pale, trembling, sweat gathering at her brow. But she was standing, and she was walking. Silence swallowed the room whole. She advanced slowly, each step etched with agony, but her eyes never left Jason, not for a heartbeat. When she reached the table, she didn't sit. She braced herself with both hands and remained standing. "I hear," she said, voice ringing with the steel that once built empires, "you were looking for a new CEO." No one breathed. "Well," she said, gaze sweeping across the stunned executives, "I'm here. Any objections?" Jason stumbled backward, face draining of color. The pen dropped from his fingers. "But, Ms. Hart, how—" "Get out," she said, quiet but lethal. Her eyes didn't flicker. "You're fired, Jason, and so is everyone who backed you. Leave my building." No one dared challenge her. That day, power returned to its rightful owner. That evening, instead of celebrating, Victoria followed the address Alex had given her. It led to a forgotten, sagging corner of Houston, a place the city itself had given up on. Her limo stopped before a rusted garage. She stepped out, leaning on her cane, and pushed the door open. A weak bulb flickered overhead. Alex sat on an overturned crate, feeding 2 old dogs with the same meat he'd taken from her weeks earlier. In the corner, on a thin mattress, lay a gaunt man with Alex's sharp, tired eyes. "Who is this?" she asked. Alex immediately stepped between them. "Don't be afraid," the man rasped. "I'm Alex's father, Daniel Cole." Victoria froze. Dr. Daniel Cole, the brilliant neurosurgeon who vanished 5 years ago after being falsely accused, dragged through the mud, stripped of his license, and erased from the medical world. Many believed he had died. But he was here, living in poverty, crushed by disgrace, raising his son in the shadows. "He taught me everything," Alex said quietly. "The diagrams, the pressure points, the words that would make you angry enough to fight. I was only his hands." Daniel tried to sit up. "I knew your crash was neurological," he whispered, "but no hospital would let me near you, so I sent my son." Victoria looked at them, this broken genius and the boy who carried his brilliance on small, defiant shoulders. They cured her for scraps, while her own board tried to destroy her for millions. Tears slipped down her cheeks, tears she hadn't allowed even on her darkest nights. She stepped forward and took Daniel's frail hand. "You're not an outcast," she said. "Tomorrow, you become chief physician of my new rehabilitation clinic. I'll hire the best legal team in the country. We'll rebuild your name, your license, your life." Then she faced Alex. "And you're going to the best school in the state. You were never meant to sweep floors. You were born to heal." 10 years passed. Victoria Hart recovered completely. Her cane became nothing more than an elegant accessory. Dr. Cole's clinic grew into a world-renowned center for neurological rehabilitation. And Alex, now Dr. Alexander Cole, graduated medical school with highest honors. Sometimes, in her office, Victoria looks at an old photograph, a filthy street boy standing before her gold-plated wheelchair. She keeps it as a reminder that help comes from places no one looks, that beneath dirt there can be pure gold, and that when the world says no, one person's belief can ignite a miracle. If this story moved you, hit like, write "miracle" in the comments, and subscribe to Human Light. Thank you for watching.